Sabine Wren's Jedi training in Ahsoka presents multiple indicators that she was not aligned with the requirements traditionally associated with Jedi development. Throughout the series, her progress remains limited, not because of inadequate ability, but because of persistent behavioral patterns that conflict with Jedi instructional practices. Her approach emphasizes personal motivations rather than adherence to established Jedi principles, which contributes to inconsistent outcomes across her training sequences. Sabine's initial engagement with the Jedi path is framed around personal objectives rather than philosophical commitment. Dialogue between Ahsoka and Huyang confirms that Sabine's primary reason for training relates to the disappearance of Ezra Bridger. This demonstrates that her motivation stems from a specific external goal, rather than an interest in broader Jedi responsibilities. Unlike traditional Padawans, who typically seek clarity, discipline, or understanding of the Force, Sabine treats Jedi instruction as a strategic means to an end. Her training sessions display recurring resistance to instruction. In her early lightsaber practice against Huyang's remote, Sabine reacts with visible frustration and argumentative responses. Jedi training traditionally emphasizes receptiveness to critique, yet Sabine consistently challenges guidance rather than integrating it. Ahsoka references this directly during their discussions, noting Sabine's difficulty with cooperation and emotional regulation. This pattern signals a misalignment between Sabine's learning style and the pedagogical structure of Jedi apprenticeship. Sabine's emotional volatility is further demonstrated during her meditation attempts. In scenes where Ahsoka instructs her to connect with the Force, Sabine struggles to maintain composure, shifting between impatience and self-doubt. These fluctuations inhibit the stillness required for Jedi sensitivity. Huyang comments on her minimal aptitude for Force perception, reinforcing that her internal distractions impede foundational development. Her unresolved trauma is another substantial barrier. Sabine's reactions to discussions about her family indicate ongoing psychological strain. Footage from the show's hologram briefing reveals the destruction of Mandalore as a source of lingering distress, which influences her responses in combat and decision-making scenarios. The Jedi path requires the ability to confront and process internal conflict, yet Sabine frequently deflects or suppresses these issues, restricting her growth. Sabine's Mandalorian identity presents structural conflicts with Jedi methodology. Mandalorian culture emphasizes familial loyalty and martial responses, which contrasts sharply with Jedi emphasis on emotional detachment and non-aggressive solutions. Throughout the series, Sabine defaults to Mandalorian tactical instincts during engagements, often prioritizing offense and personal stakes. These behaviors demonstrate that her cultural predispositions take precedence over Jedi ethical frameworks. Her interactions with Ahsoka underscore additional concerns. Ahsoka references abandoning Sabine's training in the past due to perceived instability following the purge of Mandalore. This prior termination provides historical evidence that Sabine's difficulty aligning with Jedi discipline is not limited to the present narrative, but has existed across earlier attempts. Ahsoka's caution indicates that Sabine's challenges are persistent rather than situational. Sabine's reliance on physical skill rather than Force sensitivity becomes clear during her combat engagements. She frequently resorts to armor, gadgets, and weaponry, which function as external compensators. While Mandalorians naturally rely on such tools, Jedi training aims to cultivate internal discipline and Force-based awareness. Sabine demonstrates limited progress in shifting from external to internal focus, suggesting that she does not adapt her habits to align with Jedi norms. Sabine's reactions during the duel on Seatos further illustrate her limitations. She fights Shin Hati using Mandalorian tactics rather than Force-based defense. Her reliance on armor plating to absorb injury reflects a tactical mindset inconsistent with Jedi defensive philosophy. Her inability to predict or respond to Shin's movements using intuition shows that her Force development remains minimal at this stage. The clearest behavioral conflict with the Jedi path appears during her negotiation with Baylan Skoll. When presented with the opportunity to prevent a potential galactic threat, Sabine chooses a path that prioritizes her personal connection to Ezra Bridger. This is consistent with Mandalorian loyalty, but diverges significantly from Jedi expectations of broader responsibility. Her decision reflects a prioritization of personal attachment over collective safety. which is at odds with Jedi norms as depicted throughout prior canon. Sabine's limited Force sensitivity is acknowledged repeatedly by Hu Yang, who notes that she possesses the lowest aptitude among the Jedi students he has observed in centuries of instruction. Although talent alone does not determine suitability, Sabine's low baseline aptitude combined with her behavioural patterns creates an unusually steep developmental curve. The series provides no evidence of consistent improvement in this area prior to her late-stage breakthrough. Her meditation scenes also reveal a lack of cognitive stillness. Sabine demonstrates difficulty entering a neutral mental state, frequently expressing frustration or dismissive comments about the process. Jedi development relies heavily on internal awareness and non-reactive focus, both of which Sabine struggles to maintain. These behaviours indicate an incompatibility with foundational Jedi cognitive practices. Environmental cues also emphasize Sabine's lack of integration into Jedi culture. Her workspace and training environment on Lothal remain primarily Mandalorian in design, filled with weaponry, armor, and tactical equipment. This suggests that she has not internalized Jedi lifestyle adjustments or prioritized constructing a contemplative environment conducive to training. Her surroundings reinforce her existing identity rather than fostering the mental shift required for Jedi development. Taken as a whole, the depiction of Sabine's behavior, motivations, and training responses throughout Ahsoka demonstrates that she approaches the Jedi path with misaligned expectations and incompatible habits. Her focus remains external, mission-driven, and shaped by Mandalorian priorities rather than Jedi philosophical principles. These persistent conflicts throughout her training sequences support the conclusion that Sabine Wren was not an effective Jedi candidate, based on observed evidence within the series. Sabine Wren's decision-making throughout Ahsoka demonstrates recurring conflicts with core Jedi responsibilities. Her choices repeatedly prioritize personal loyalty over broader risk assessment, which directly impacts the narrative's depiction of her suitability as a Jedi apprentice. The most consequential example appears during her exchange with Baylan Skoll on Cetos, where she elects to relinquish the map, an action that grants Imperial remnants access to a new galaxy. The choice is framed by the dialogue as a deliberate prioritization of Ezra Bridger's safety over potential galactic consequences, illustrating her misalignment with Jedi principles of collective responsibility. The structure of Jedi ethics across prior canon consistently presents detachment as a functional mechanism to ensure impartial decision-making. Sabine's actions diverge from this model. Her personal attachment to Ezra functions as the dominant influence on her judgment, even when presented with clear warnings. Baylan explicitly states the stakes of her decision. Despite this information, Sabine accepts the conditions, demonstrating that personal bonds supersede her training. This behaviour reflects a recurring pattern identified earlier in the series, where her motivations are rooted in personal history rather than service to a broader cause. Sabine's operational decisions also illustrate a limited understanding of Jedi strategic responsibilities. During combat sequences, she frequently initiates engagements in ways that prioritize immediate tactical goals rather than long-term outcomes. In the encounter with Shin Hati on Lothal, Sabine prioritizes direct confrontation despite lacking Force-assisted defensive capabilities. Her refusal to retreat despite Ahsoka's earlier guidance about controlled engagement indicates a resistance to Jedi tactical discipline and reliance on Mandalorian combat instincts. The absence of Force-based situational awareness remains evident throughout the series. Jedi practitioners typically demonstrate heightened perception through subtle cues or anticipatory movement. Sabine's engagements lack these indicators. In the episode depicting her training aboard Ahsoka's ship, she fails to predict Hu Yang's remote blaster patterns and reacts only after receiving physical contact. Her inability to integrate Force-based perception into her combat style reinforces the conclusion that her development remains limited to physical reflexes and learned Mandalorian techniques. Sabine's behaviour aboard the Eye of Sion further illustrates structural conflicts with Jedi expectations. When captured, she exhibits no attempt at calm reflection or Force-guided assessment. Instead, she relies exclusively on Mandalorian situational interpretation and negotiation. While effective within her cultural framework, This behavior contrasts with Ahsoka's emphasis on stillness and internal assessment. The absence of meditative grounding demonstrates that Sabine does not utilize Jedi tools in high-pressure scenarios, even when explicitly trained in them. Her interactions with Baylan's skull provide additional insight into her philosophical misalignment. Baylan identifies her emotional instability, referencing her fear and uncertainty. His commentary aligns with Huyang's earlier evaluation of her suitability. Both assessments emerge from characters with different philosophical backgrounds, yet both note similar behavioral patterns. This consistency across perspectives strengthens the textual evidence that Sabine's internal grounding remains insufficient for Jedi practice. Sabine's Force development throughout the series appears inconsistent and situational, rather than systemic. Her late activation of Force abilities during the final episodes lacks clear correlation to training progression. Prior scenes depict no measurable improvement in meditation, perception, or emotional regulation. The sudden emergence of Force aptitude during stress-induced scenarios suggests narrative necessity rather than evidence of internal alignment with Jedi practices. This reinforces the conclusion that Sabine's Force use is reactive rather than disciplined. In the context of Jedi pedagogy, Sabine's relationship with Ahsoka introduces further complications. Ahsoka repeatedly demonstrates hesitation in continuing Sabine's training, citing past instability following the purge of Mandalore. This historical reference indicates that Sabine's emotional challenges are not circumstantial but ongoing. Ahsoka's reluctance serves as narrative confirmation that Sabine has not demonstrated sustained readiness for Jedi commitment across multiple training periods. Sabine's integration into mission structures demonstrates additional tension between her personal motivations and Jedi expectations. When planning strategies with Hera Syndulla and Ahsoka, Sabine often pushes for actions that advance her personal objective of locating Ezra. These preferences influence operational choices, including her insistence on pursuing Morgan Elsbeth's path despite insufficient information. Her mission priorities consistently center on her attachment rather than strategic necessity. Her cultural background also exerts significant influence on her reactions. Mandalorian codes emphasize loyalty to family and clan, as well as direct confrontation in conflict. These principles visibly guide Sabine's choices, often taking precedence over Jedi teachings. Her identity markers, including her armor, weapons, and combat style, remain unchanged throughout training, symbolically reinforcing her continuity with Mandalorian ideology rather than adoption of Jedi values. The series presents no evidence that she attempts to reconcile or blend these frameworks. During her time aboard the Porgil and in the New Galaxy, Sabine's interactions with Ezra reveal further examples of conflicting priorities. When explaining how she arrived, she minimizes the consequences of her choice to join Baylan and allows the conversation to shift away from the broader implications. Her reluctance to address the full weight of her decision suggests a lack of accountability, which contrasts with Jedi expectations of reflection and responsibility for actions. Additionally, Sabine's reliance on external tools persists throughout the series. Even during later battles, she leans on her armor's functionality and her blasters as primary tools. Jedi training typically encourages a shift from external reliance to internal guidance through the Force. Sabine's continued preference for Mandalorian equipment signals that she does not transition into Jedi methodologies, even after prolonged exposure to Ahsoka's teachings. Her confrontation with Shin Hati on Peridea reinforces this conclusion. Sabine attempts to use the Force to push Shin, but fails to apply consistent grounding or technique. Her subsequent use of traditional weaponry demonstrates that the Force remains supplemental rather than foundational in her combat identity. This inconsistency underlines the broader pattern that Sabine's development does not align with Jedi expectations of integrated Force usage. Taken together, Sabine's actions across the series present a coherent pattern. Her choices are guided primarily by personal attachment, cultural loyalty, and tactical instinct rather than by Jedi ethics, discipline, or philosophy. Her behavior repeatedly demonstrates that emotional regulation, selflessness, and internal alignment with the Force do not drive her decision-making. Based on cumulative textual evidence, Sabine Wren does not meet the behavioral, philosophical, or structural requirements expected of a Jedi apprentice within the established Star Wars canon.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.